All right, guys, quickly before my dad come, I just want you guys to know he has no filter, okay? Too many years on CPD don't mess them up. So all that to say, all thoughts and views are strictly his own. I might agree with some of them, I'll give you that, but they're completely his own. Oh, he's coming back. Gotta go.
What's up, Gen Geek fam? It is Doc Solo. I know you thought I was done after that first episode of Solo Sayz. Say it ain't so. Y'all should know better by now. Today, we're going to be covering some really deep and important subjects that are on my heart. Some things have transpired within the past week or so in the comic sphere that warrant some addressing on our part and some feedback. And we're going to dive right into it. So let's roll that clip. Check it out. What's up, Gen Geek fam? Welcome to the lab. I am Doc Solo, the OG here at Generation Geek, and it's been a while since we did Solo Sayz. You know, my last one stirred up quite the ruckus, and I think some people thought that I was ducking some smoke because I hadn't been back here on it with another Solo Sayz, but you know, that's what we do with that smoke. It's all good here. You know, we said it from Jump Street, we ain't ducking, but I've been very busy with some business things and life things, the whole 9 yards. And I wanted to come here and kind of jump on and share with you guys some really heavy stuff, man, that's been transpiring in the comic sphere that I think we need to kind of touch up on. And I'll give you my insights. And as always, thank you guys for joining the Gen Geek fam. The love that we have received thus far, Jay and I, has been incredible. Absolutely incredible. I'm recording this on the day of the eclipse. I just got finished checking out the stellar show, and it was amazing. I had my glasses on. Had my NASA approved solar eclipse glasses on. But man, this is a big celestial event, and so didn't want to miss that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for supporting us and following all the great stuff. We're going to dive right into some of the big news that has hit the comics world the past week or so, week plus. And this was brought to me by, he asked specifically, PBot 2029 said that you love the show and we love you too, man. Thank you so much. Again, for all the Gen Geek fam that have joined us, and we do read the comment section often, and when something's important to you guys, we want to address it. And so we're going to dive right in. He asked about some feedback on the Ed Piskor situation. For those of you who all don't know, Ed Piskor was a professional comic book artist that had a really significant YouTube following here on Comics Kayfabe. He was partnered with on his show Jim Rugg, who's also a comic book artist. Ed Piskor had done work for Marvel as well as other publishers, and had his a very popular self-published hip hop title for showing his love for the hip hop culture and all those things. And I didn't know him from a can of paint, but what transpired this past week or so, I didn't know about it, PBot 2029, until you mentioned it to me. I got to be honest. A lot of times I'm not on the internet like I should be, especially now since the channel is growing. It would behoove me and us that I make myself a little bit more cognizant to the going-ons and keep my fingers on the pulse. But that's what we have this tribe for. You guys are gracious enough to bring to our attention things that are important to you and that matter to you. And so if it matters to you in the comic sphere, in the geek space, it matters to us. And so Ed Piskor, sadly, took his own life a few days ago. And my wife and I, once I saw this comment by PBot, I dove in and I saw the news articles and all the tributes and stuff, and it broke my heart. It's tragic anytime someone feels that life is not worth living. For you all who don't know, I am a man of devout faith as a born again Christian. And I believe that God's gift of life is first and foremost the most precious thing that he bestowed upon us. And to feel that you are at a place where you think that it's no longer worth living, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And so for those of you who don't know what happened, I'll just briefly run through it because there's tons of channels that have covered this event. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little hesitant. I discussed it with my wife. I was a little hesitant as to whether or not I would even comment on it because I'm not a fan of ambulance chasing and, jumping on social media bandwagons because something is trending, especially when it's something as tragic as this. The reason why it's trending is horrible to me. It's horrible to me. If you guys have been on the channel or seen any of our previous videos and shows, you may know that I am a retired police supervisor in Chicago and other departments, 27 years in law enforcement. And sadly, I have seen firsthand the tragedy of self-inflicted loss of life. And to see someone, due to perceived pressures from the internet and accusations, go that far without having their day, it's problematic to me. It's problematic to me to a large degree. Now, let me be clear. Before we go any further. The accusations levied against him were significant, right? They were heavy. A young lady claimed that he had been grooming her when she was 17 on social media. And had all that stuff is public. You can Google it. I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. But apparently other young ladies came forward. But I don't think that I'm not sure. So correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm not sure the extent of all their ages. But I know the one that triggered it stated that it was a few years ago when she was 17 years old. And again, if that is true, because I still believe in due process, which sadly is not a thing on social media. It's not a thing here. Once we made the court of public opinion the court in the eyes of the people with social media, I believe we opened up floodgates that, as we have seen, really do take people out. Okay. Cancel culture is real, and it's absurd to me, to be quite honest. The extent that people will go to silence, embarrass, defame other people without having all the facts and evidence. Okay, just an accusation. Now, when I say just accusation, it's not saying that if it were true, that it should be disregarded because of the platform in which it was levied. That's not what I'm saying. There is a premise in law enforcement and in the judicial system that it matters less what you know. What matters most is what you can prove. And we don't give people the benefit of the doubt to be heard when an accuser steps forward. We just immediately, as a community, as a social body, just jump on like a feeding frenzy of sharks with chum in the water. And now you're literally guilty until proven innocent. And the pressure that social media has inspired on people, especially people with platforms. They had a significant platform. I think they cracked 100K, but they were considered in the comic sphere reputable, and they were doing the thing here on the tube. And so I didn't watch them often. I did subscribe to them, but I caught a few shows because it's part of the culture. And so I was familiar. And so when I heard this, and then I heard the reasons why, again, I will not sit in judgment whether or not the accusations were true or not. I will just say this, regardless of whether they were true or not, that's not what caused him to take his life from what I've seen. It was a cascade of events. I believe that he was disavowed by his partner on the tube, Mr. Rugg. From what I saw, they made distance quickly. That an art gallery that he was supposed to have his work displayed locally, I believe they're in the Pittsburgh area, I believe, pulled out, costing him income. And then everyone kind of jumped on the bandwagon on social media. And I don't know the brother's mental state at the time, but apparently it was enough that he ended up writing a lengthy exit letter that I read it. It was sad, but basically telling people what he was about to do to himself and bequeathing, what he would like done with his assets, with his family and his YouTube channel, the whole 9 yards. And he did the deed. Now, as of this recording, I have not researched what actually occurred, and I don't think that even is the issue. I think the greater issue, in my opinion, is to Peabot's question: is this the type of landscape as artists that we want to live in? And I don't think it's about the art, quite honestly. Let's be clear. It's about the culture that inspires such despair and despondency. The moment that you are deemed persona non grata, right? A person of ill repute, someone that should not be associated with, entertained, and effectively canceled. A lot of people aren't built like that nowadays. See, I grew up in an era where literally y'all heard the old saying, sticks and stones, right? And many people in my generation, we are wired that way. But let me tell you something about geeks and fandoms, because if you're watching this, you're part of that family. We all know that for many of us, this space, this place is the validation and the community that we've all longed for a long time. And some of us are fortunate enough via our talents, whether it be writing or drawing or whatever, coloring, whatever, lettering, illustration, whatever the case may be, to be dubbed worthy of status and stature that previously was denied us when we were the geeks and the dweebs in the basement, reading comics, watching cartoons, the whole 9 yards. This was, for many of us, this was the community and the love and the attention that we longed for. And to have that potentially snatched from you, especially if, there are other mental and emotional things going on, it's a recipe for disaster. It's an absolute recipe for disaster. Let's call a spade a spade. I'm transparent to a fault, and I try to be, because I had my grandson this weekend, and I always said, the most dangerous man in the world is a man that's got nothing to lose, that has got nothing to hide, no skeletons in the closet. And I've always prided myself on trying to be that kind of guy. And so I've made it public knowledge before that I'm personally diagnosed with major depressive disorder, right? And that's very common, believe it or not, in creative spheres. Bipolar disorder, mental health. Many of us in the comics industry or fans, we may find we are actually on the spectrum. I I was diagnosed with having Asperger's years ago and just recently took another assessment test that placed me firmly on the spectrum. Okay. That is really throwing my family for a loop. But I had come to grips with this a while ago when I was diagnosed. But all you got to do is attend a convention or dive into the comic spaces. And a lot of us, we say it jokingly, but it's true. All you gotta do is be a little bit observant. We are the outcasts. We are the socially awkward. We are sometimes the emotionally and if not mentally challenged. That's a real thing in the comic space, and it's very pervasive. And so, but we handle each other so recklessly, without any care, without any concern, and many times we'll enter these spaces like this on social media, on YouTube, where this is being shown, ill prepared for what follows. Okay. Ill prepared for detractors and naysayers and gators that want to come at your life because they take umbrage with, your position on certain matters, or, claims that you may make that, regardless of whether they're true or not, just trolls. And a lot of people enter this space and are not prepared for what follows. Okay. And let alone equipped, skip prepared, even just equipped. I can say in full transparency, with all my law enforcement, and being used to being the villain and being the necessary evil in the landscape, many times being spit upon and called out my name and called race traitor and everything else. And I thought that I had thicker skin than I actually did until I actually got on here. Now, granted, my skin is thick enough. It really is. But I was like, wow, how much more so those that at least didn't have the previous life experiences that I've had, from military to law enforcement to whatever, that kind of at least fortified me to enter this space and withstand, the darts and the arrows that may come our way. Everybody's not like that, man.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
What's up, guys? This is Jay. As you guys know, we love making content for you guys, but as we're starting to notice, many of you are watching, but many of you are not subbing. So why not join the GEEK fam? Come rock with us. Just hit that sub button, hit the bell. We'll love to have you. Y'all be blessed. Peace.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Everybody's not like that. And I think we need to be more sensitive to that. Now, I'm not speaking to the charges and the allegations, because my experience in law enforcement prevents me from taking a stance sans information and facts, let alone the truth. I was talking to my grandson this past weekend, and he was telling me about some things that had been going on with him, and he started talking about facts. And I asked him, I said, grandson, do you know the difference between facts and the truth? And he kind of stumbled, and he wasn't quite sure. Sharp kid, he's going to be here on Generation Geek. He was supposed to be on here this weekend. We just couldn't make it work. Jay had some things going on, and we had some things going on our end. So, but we're going to have a third generation of geek introduced to you guys here. But he said, no, G-Pod, I'm not completely clear on that. I said, the truth is oftentimes composed of facts, but we make the mistake of treating facts as if they're the truth, when facts can justify a lie or a falsehood. Now, I'm not stating that what happened in the situation that led to this dire outcome was that, but we're taught in law enforcement basically to kind of make sure that you have enough facts to where the truth becomes clear. And then you kind of, you go from there, right? Because there can be facts and lies. There can be, right? Actually, the most effective untruths are littered with facts, but they're not the truth, if you're tracking with me. And so, sadly, the truth was withheld from this man in a timely fashion, and he just could not handle the backlash and the disenfranchisement that he experienced, and that's sad. And so regardless, someone didn't know him from a can of paint, was familiar with his art, personally was not a fan, but he had, again, that's a personal thing. That's not an indication of his competency or his pedigree. But all I know is whenever someone loses their life, what I believe is unnecessarily and prematurely, anytime someone does this, it's at the very least premature. And I would go so far as to say unnecessary. And when you see that the culprit is a pervasive ideology permeating the landscape of cancel culture, minus this man even being able to be heard and feeling that things had gone so far that people would not hear him, and that carrying that much weight with him, I think we need to tread a little bit more carefully. People often talk about freedom of speech, not knowing really what that means. Was it the First Amendment? But it says that Congress will not pass any laws, right, that will infringe upon said freedoms. But we got to understand, I think you guys if you guys saw the sit down we had with Mr. Kevin Grevious, freedom of speech ain't free. There is a price to be paid. There's a price to be paid. Someone's going to pay that price for what is said. There are consequences that we have to be aware of, that we have to be cognizant of. Okay. We need to tread with a little bit more care and concern and not be so reckless. The social age has made people reckless with their behavior, absolutely reckless out there, man. The keyboard courage and the feeding frenzy. People love to jump on a massacre, right? And some people like to incite one. It's littered with that. Now, sad behavior of anything involving young people or any abuses, they cannot be tolerated. They cannot be tolerated. Now, here's another point that I want to illustrate, and hopefully it does not sound insensitive. Okay, but so many people jumped on the bandwagon, and I believe his attorney, while he was still with us, even stated the fact, which is true, at least it's true in here in Illinois, about in a consensual age. And though it is socially, in my opinion, inappropriate for a fully realized adult male, at least past his 20s, to be pursuing a teenage girl. I don't care if she's 18. I don't care if she's 19. It is not illegal. It is not illegal in many states. I believe in their state, the age of consent is 16. Okay. I think here in Illinois, if I remember correctly, the age, I believe it's 16, but I definitely know you can be treated as an adult at 17, which is what the age when she said that she was being groomed by Mr. Piskor. But he never got his day in court. Court of public opinion did him in. I don't know if there were any other mental or emotional issues, but I know that it started an avalanche in his life that he felt was irreparable, and that's sad. And so I'm going to stop right there. Feel free to leave your comments in the comment section if I've said anything inappropriate. I do apologize. I'm trying to tread carefully because it is a sensitive matter, and I really am not a fan of commenting on things minus significant information, but most of it's been out. I read the letter. You can find it on Facebook if it's still up. There was a link to it. I don't know if they took it down. And the events that transpired, it threw him into despair, obviously. Tragic. And if there was some trauma on the alleged victims and that's equally tragic. And nobody wins in this. Nobody wins in this. And so our community, at the very least, whether you're a fan of him or not, and his work or not, the geek sphere is still lessened at the very least by the events that transpired. Something needs to be done about this trend in social spaces of canceling people, and it's on both sides. I don't care which side of the party line you had. Each side has their own version of cancel culture. Certain people rightfully should be canceled, but not canceled minus substantiating evidence and whatever would pass for due process. Now, on to another fair that happened recently. This one rocked me personally. Okay, not to say that the Mr. Piskor situation didn't rock me personally, but I didn't know him. This next person that we lost this week, I actually did have a connection with, and this person had left their fingerprints on my life personally. And his passing is sadly under exhibited in the comic sphere as well as the social media. And so I was working out this morning, and my best friend, my brother, we've been rocking forever. He's my studio mate, Mr. Warren Fitzpatrick. He's also the guy that's responsible largely for Generation Geek existing. He was the one that suggested to my son and I that we do something together, bringing our respective skills and passions to a singular platform to create something unique here on YouTube. And hopefully we're doing that. But he was the one that inspired all of this. And he texted me this morning while I was working out, and he told me MD Bright, Mark D. Bright, Doc Bright, however you may know him, artiste extraordinaire, passed. And though I'm not, constantly on social media because of my business pursuits and my focus having to create art and also run a business and family and all this other stuff, I was a little disturbed that I hadn't heard it in my interactions with social media. And so I was immediately shaken to my core. And I'll tell you why in a second. Shout out. If you guys have any connection with these brothers and sisters, I want to give mad props to Black Comic Lords in their homage to Brother Bright. I watched it today, at least, part of that panel discussion, and they did him justice. They did him justice. For you all who don't know, MD Bright was a powerhouse in many people's opinion when it comes to visual and sequential storytelling. The man was absolutely amazing. I know he's an art school product. He worked in advertising, doing storyboards and whatnot, but he worked on some phenomenal titles. Just Google him, man. Just Google him. As I'm playing this in post, there are going to be images. He did considered one of the hottest covers ever for Transformers, where he played off of the title. This is the Transformers Are Dead with Shockwave. People have made dioramas and figures off of that cover. He worked on Armor Wars. He worked on what I didn't even know it was him at the time. In 1997, this dude did Spider-Man versus Wolverine, and that was a fan favorite book. He was the penciler on that, and it was an amazing story. That was MD Bright. I'm going to be sharing in post. You'll hopefully, as I'm saying this, you're looking at some reference to what I'm talking about. But he was also probably more famously known for his work on Armor Wars, which transcended from the comics all the way to I believe the big screen with Iron Man. was it Iron Man 3, I think, if I'm correct, where they kind of touched on, they tried to add a little bit of that in Extremis to it, where basically Tony Stark starts deactivating all of any tech that's based off of the Iron Man armor. I'm not a history aficionado like that, so correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. So Jay will correct me, and I'm sure you guys will too, and I'm okay with that. But it still stands that he was the primary penciler on Armor Wars, as well as, to me, his coup de grace, his magnum opus. He was the co-creator of Icon and Rocket in the transformative era that was Milestone. And I will be doing my commentary on Milestone in the future. But let's just say this, without going too far down that rabbit hole, he was part of making Milestone great when it was great. And I'll just leave that there. And we'll touch on that later, okay? Because I don't want to get distracted. Because I'm really passionate about what Milestone was and feel some kind of way about where it is. And so he was an amazing talent, man. I think he was often underappreciated. And to that point, and I'm going to talk about why it's personal for me soon. So stay with me. To that point, my guy told me that there was a YouTuber that he follows, that he knows personally. I've actually met the guy. I won't mention his name. Cool dude, man. Really good dude. And he's one of the few people that actually did a tribute on YouTube. If you do a keyword search for Mark Bright or MD Bright, you're not going to see a whole lot. You'll see Black Comics Lords and this other guy. And let me just say before I jump into the critique of his commentary that I did have issue with, I want to thank him for doing that, man, because he gave my man his flowers. By and large, he gave him his flowers, and he actually owned that the sentiment that many of us have about Mr. Bright, that he was underappreciated, and that he was, regardless of your aesthetic, one of the best visual storytellers. I mean, he did Quantum and Woody with Christopher Priest, which was, I believe, was a bestseller. Okay. And that's my best friend's favorite book. Quantum and Woody. I've read some of it. I've never made it all the way through, but this man was an exceptional storyteller. For those of you all don't know, the best way I can describe him is he was a mix between John Byrne with his posing and his anatomy and his structural integrity of his characters and their acting, as well as visual storytelling expertise. And to me, a mix with a little bit of Walter Simonson, that he had this at least by the time he got to the Icon and Rocket era, where he did some really exaggerated cape work, and he was never as loose as the great Walter Simonson, who I'm a huge fan of. But you saw the influences there. Incredible storyteller. And he passed at 68 years old on March 27th. Now, as of this is the day of the eclipse. This is Monday, April 8th. Now, CBR and a few other outlets did, acknowledge it, and that's great. My thing was in the social media sphere. It was largely crickets. It's largely crickets. I was looking for it before I came on here, and it bothered me because he was such a phenomenal talent. And why it bothers me personally is because back in early 2000, I had started working on my projects at Honor Studios. I was knocking out pages, and on my computer, on the computer that I'm talking to you guys right now, I have a folder called Art Inspiration, where I just, as things catch my eye on the internet and in galleries, I just dump them into this folder, and it cycles through my screensaver. And in early 2000, his work popped up, right? And I started Googling, I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's got a website or something. And I found his website, his personal website, and it was an AOL site. And it was in 2000. AOL, even then, AOL was kind of like gone the way of the dodo, but he still had an AOL email. And so I emailed him cold. And I told him what his work meant to me. And how when I stumbled across Milestone in 93, I was at a place of personal crisis and transition. And that's why Milestone meant so much to me. I was not, a comics guy by any significant measure. I was a lay fan at best. I had comics. I had a comic book collection, but I wasn't a regular collector. I frequented the comic book store. I was not, an every Wednesday guy. And especially at this time, because I was broke. Unemployed, had one child, one on the way, and the world was looking very bleak, very bleak. I had gotten out of the military and all the promises of this high-tech job that I had, and it translated into civilian life. It didn't. It so didn't. And it was dark for me. And I was 23. And I walked into a comic book store looking for a little bit of retail therapy, and Milestone had just hit the shelves. And I saw his work, and John Paul Leon, and Blood Syndicate, and Static, and Icon and Rocket. And so fast forward to the early 2000s, I emailed my man because his artwork popped up on my screen. I emailed him, and he responded. He emailed me back. And I asked if he'd be willing to speak to me. Mind you, there was no YouTube, there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook. There were just like message boards and email. That's pretty much all you got. Forums, message boards, and email. And so, long story short, he started mentoring me. I would scan in and send him progress of my work, and he'd red letter it and pencil it. And at the time, Mr. Bright had lost his mother. He had lost his mother. Now, my mother was still alive at this time. My mom just passed 2 years ago. But he had lost his mother, and he had. Now leave the room if you guys don't like this part, but this is who I am. I refuse to shy away from it. But he had given his life over to the Lord. He'd become a man of faith, and he was a babe in Christianity. Even though he had grown up in the church, he played the bass guitar, I believe. There's a few videos floating around with him on it. I think I'm sure the photo here, Black Comics Lords had it with him actually with his hands like this, and he's on a guitar. And so he had sent me some videos of him playing the guitar in church, and it was his mother's passing that sparked, as it does for many of us, a heightened awareness of spiritual things and the faith. And though he had grown up in the church, he had never practiced Christianity. And so when he found out the nature of my studio being a faith-inspired studio, and that I was a man of the cloth, literally, it became a mutual exchange. Though he was my elder chronologically, I was his elder spiritually. And we would talk on things of the faith, we would talk art, and we would talk for hours. I believe it was a sincere connection on multiple levels, but unexpectedly, I think it was on my end, to be honest, communication got lost to the point, I think on a previous video, I don't know, because I'm not going to leave a card. I know I mentioned it here in passing on Generation Geek, that if anybody knew how to get in touch with him, I was trying to get in touch with him. I've been trying to get in touch with him for the past few months. Okay. And with no response. His email, I actually have, I'm not going to show it, but I actually have his personal, it's now blacked out, understandably, but I won't delete it. I have his number on my phone. And, we would talk weekly. It wasn't even like an infrequent thing. It was like same bat time, same bat channel. And we would talk weekly, and I'd send him artwork, and he'd tell me what he thought, and we'd go into faith and life and that kind of stuff. And I believe he was living in New Jersey at the time. And, it was special for me, man, because here it is. I'm getting insight. I'm being mentored by someone that had his fingerprints all over the landscape. And so when I tell you this, Warren, when he sent me this, he knew, because, he's been my best friend for longer than that. He remembered when we were, communicating, corresponding regularly. And so he obviously knew I hadn't heard about it, or I would have reached out to him. And so losing that one, it hits me. This one hits different. And so fast forward to today, I start listening to this brother's commentary on MD Bright. And when I tell you, no shade, no cap, my man gave him his flowers. But I did take exception with a couple of things, if I'm being quite honest. Let me preface it by saying this. You guys already know where we stand here on Generation Geek as far as geek culture and as far as real life. Okay, I've said it many times before. And as this is maybe not here on this platform, but those who know me know that how I rock and how I roll. I'm not quick to play the race flag. Now, what I won't do is say that race is not an issue. Okay. But the position this brother took when he made the comment is he doesn't know why MD Bright, as good as he was, why he was never acknowledged in the pantheon of storytellers and pencilers as he should have been. And he mentioned the likes of Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and, and how he believes that MD Bright should be right up there with him. And I totally agree. But he made a comment that I felt was, at worst, ignorant, and at the least insensitive. When he said, and again, this is coming from a Caucasian brother, and he says he won't say that it's racism because it's 2024 and everything's about race, right? And I believe the dismissive nature of that comment was inappropriate. Okay. And I said this to Warren. Now, for those of you who don't know, Warren is literally my best friend. All right. We spend vacations together. Okay. He and his wife, they come and they stay at our house, and he's about to celebrate his 50th birthday, and my wife and I are driving down there. But he's a tall, lanky, 6'7", 6'8" white dude from West Virginia. And I'm a 6'1". We are polar opposites. So when I tell you that our relationship transcends race, it does. But we also are very honest. You cannot be in my circle if we cannot have real conversations, regardless of what your culture is. Okay. But what I will not do is I will not blacksplain your experience. And this is what I felt this brother was doing. I felt that he was white splaining. Okay. When he says that he doesn't believe that it was a racial component as to why Mr. Bright had not achieved the heights of the profession and recognition in an era when comics were booming, along the lines of Jim Lee, John Byrne, and all these other guys. And what was funny to me is that he kept posing the question as to why, and he asked the audience as why, and you want to ignore the most obvious. There's a racial component. And you say, well, Solo, you're just a black guy, who's being divisive. I'm not being divisive in any real sense. Do you know why? Because in my conversations with Mr. Bright, this is not anecdotal. This is not speculative. This is not theorizing. This is none of that. Hypothesizing. From the horse's mouth, he shared with me his experiences in the industry as a black man. Okay. And this was back in the early 2000s. Now, for those of you who know comic book history, all of you historians out there, like many of our tried and true American institutions, comic books were largely founded by white people. Okay. And like many American institutions, breaking through that ceiling, being a person of color, was difficult, and in previous eras, impossible, to the point where the likes of creative powerhouses in the newspaper era, like George Harriman, had to hide the fact that he was actually a mulatto man from New Orleans and had to pass and die masquerading as a white person so that he could earn a living, which was quite lucrative back then. He was a superstar in his era. But had they found out that he was a black man, he would have been canceled. And so when I hear this commentator ignore the fact that ignore the possibility, I know it's a fact, he didn't, so I'll give him that benefit of the doubt. Ignore the possibility that there was not a racial factor. This is my response to that. Okay. And I don't want to make this about that, but I feel like I have to address it. Okay. I feel like I have to address it. And Black Comics Lords touched on it. They touched on it, on why aren't there more of us in the pantheon of greats publicly, not subjectively, but objectively, in the higher positions of fandom. Why aren't there more black people there? And he says he doesn't want to. He says because his justification was he didn't even realize MD Bright was a black man until whenever, I guess, he saw him or whatever, you know. And he mentions Ron Lim and these other guys, you know, how race it doesn't play a factor on the fan side. And guess what? It doesn't. But where it does play a factor is behind the scenes on the pro side. Okay. It plays a factor in marketing. It plays a factor in editorial. It plays a factor in which books you are assigned. Okay. It plays a factor in how you are promoted in the marketplace. He mentioned Wizard Magazine. Guess what? It plays a factor in marketing because they're fan facing. But the rear of that, the business side of that looks totally different. Don't believe me? Don't believe me? Check out my other channel, Ka-Pow School, where I interview some of my buddies in the industry, and some of them are black and white, okay? But with the black artists, it's a real thing. Today. Now, you didn't want to believe that. He didn't want to believe that was a factor 20 plus years ago. Okay, it's always been a factor. I tell the story. I think I said it here, and forgive me because again, I don't want to swing wide on this. But a friend of mine that I actually interviewed on Ka-Pow, who's an industry heavy hitter, before we were doing the show, he was like, "Man, Solo, you know, you need to, man, you want to get some work at Marvel DC? I got you, bro. Blah blah blah." He says, "Because you know, Solo." I know you had to provide for your family, and I know, you know, when you got picked up by DC, I get your reasons why, but had you stuck with it, man, you would have been one of the greats. And I'm not making this up. This is really what he said. And I pushed back on it. I didn't say, "Oh man, thank you." I said, because I really do value truth and specificity and clarity. I'm not one to just take compliments. They're great, but they don't really carry a lot of weight with how my brain functions. Again, remember, I'm on the spectrum. Okay. I am legitimately on the spectrum. And so truth really does matter to me in a profound way. And I pushed back on him and I said, "I appreciate that, man." I said, "But name me. You are in the industry. You have been for now going on 30 years. I said, name me one A-list black penciler. One A-list black penciler. Okay. If you can name me one A-list, and by the criteria of A-list, I mean they're on the top tier books. They are put on titles, knowing that when they're part of that creative team, sales, at least initial sales, are virtually guaranteed. Because again, they're playing chess at the publishers. They're playing chess. Okay, so the teams are typically chosen with a fair amount of intention. Okay, the creative teams. But they're put on these books to either launch a title to get it started, guaranteed sales on the top tier books, okay, and then are marketed and promoted heavily. He couldn't name me one. I gave him one. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you one. I'll give you one, Olivier Ka-Pow. And let's keep in mind, he's not American, he's French. He is black, but he's also of the LGBTQ community. So there's some virtue signaling there. But he's a phenomenal artist. Will not take away from that. I love that dude's work. Love it. He is in my art inspiration. I said, but I'll give you Olivier Ka-Pow. Give me another one based on that criteria. And he couldn't. I said, and guess what? I appreciate the sentiment, but I know I'm nowhere near there. I like to be there one day. I don't have the body of work. I said, but I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I'd be the exception to that rule. I'm not. People, we have great artists, and you guys leave in the comments. But again, remember the criteria. Put on books, top selling books, right? Or launch new titles that carry a lot of significance with the publisher to, at the very least, they'll put these artists on for the first arc or the first 4 or 5 issues to get the ball rolling in sales. And then they're slowly, because of what they're paying them and the cost of production, they'll slowly pivot them off of that book and put similar complementary pencilers and inkers on that book in the hopes that sales maintain. But the fans rarely fall for it. They rarely fall for it. Name me some black artists that are that. Not saying that we're not good. I'm talking about that are put in those positions. It doesn't happen. And MD Bright should have been that. He definitely should have been that. And so that's my pushback on that commentary. If you find it, I'm sure I've given enough context clues. Tell me what you think, because they acknowledge Mr. Bright's greatness and his contribution and, the whole 9 yards. I knew him semi-personally. We talked every week for about 2 or 3 months, and then it fell off. I think it's because of my work schedule. And then I've reached out to him periodically and with crickets. And I don't know if he'd been sick or what, but communication eventually ceased. There was no bad blood. It took me unaware, so I even asked other acquaintances of mine that lived in that area, and they know him as well. And I'm like, man, if you see this dude, if you have a way of getting in touch with him, I think he was largely a recluse. From what they said, he didn't do shows and things like that, and that, and he's on the East Coast. But when I heard the commentary, I felt a little agitated by the ignoring of the obvious, right? Once you remove all the other factors, what remains is likely the truth, when everything else being equal. Okay, I believe that's akin to Occam's razor. And so my man never got his flowers, in my opinion, in the opinion of many others. He never got his flowers while he was here. I know that he kind of drifted to obscurity after Quantum Woody, maybe Milestone. And I don't know where he was with the industry. I know that when I spoke to him, he was largely disenfranchised at that time, but that may have also been the grief of losing his mother. But this was a big one in the industry and for me personally. MD Bright gone, 68 years old on March 27th. Mark Bright. Check out some of his works, man. There are sites like the League of Geeks. You can check out Spider-Man versus Wolverine. That one stuck in my brain because of just the writing and the artwork and the poses and the sequentials. Check out Quantum and Woody. Check out Icon and Rocket. Check out the old Armor Wars. He worked on Avengers. This man was everywhere, and people didn't know who he was because he was not largely promoted. Wizard never did anything on him. Right? And people say, oh, I don't want to call Wizard racist. I'm not calling anybody a racist. I'm saying there were racial factors. Right? You can unintentionally be something and not see it. You can unintentionally operate with the same tendencies unawares, because you are in a position where that is largely not your norm. You're not called to operate otherwise until it's brought to your attention. So some people may say, yeah, everything in 2024 is racism. I don't believe that either. I just believe that we're calling it out more so than ever because of the advent of social media, because it gives voice to platforms and to people such as me that have experienced it recently. I'm not even talking about 20 years ago. I can go back as far as last month. Okay, where it was obvious that's what it was. Obvious. And I had to call the lady out. This was at a thrift store. At a thrift store in Texas. We don't like to address it because it makes us uncomfortable. But it is an uncomfortable and necessary truth, even in today's landscape. And don't white-splain. Don't say that that's not it. Because I don't have receipts, but I have secondhand knowledge. I talked to Mr. Bright. That was a factor. That was a huge factor that led to his disenfranchisement. Not getting the recognition he felt that he deserved. Okay. Our hearts go out to the family. I know he leaves behind some siblings. But I know the comics industry as a whole, there's certain people like Kari Randolph who gave a shout out to Dude, to my man. He's touched a lot of lives and influences, including mine. And yeah. So I know this may have been a little bit more stoic in the subject matter and a little heavy. But you got to blame Peabot 2029 for the direction, and Warren, my boy, for bringing this to my attention. And so I thought to go ahead and, kill both of these birds with the same stone in this effort. But you're going to be getting a lot more solo Sayz, as well as I'm working on some comic book reviews. I know some people asked for it. I just created some visual assets to kind of make the reviews more engaging. All right. We have a scaling system that is fully visual, for which when I do the reviews, you can kind of follow along and see where we're tracking. Okay. It's going to be cool. Those will be dropping soon within the next week or so. If you're in the Michigan area, I will be at Grand Rapids Comic-Con. We are officially partnered with them, my school. And so I will be doing some programming for them, as well as some other cons that we have officially partnered with, me and my fake school. Those who get it, get the joke. We've officially partnered with them. So if you're in the Grand Rapids, not Grand Rapids, the Kalamazoo area, because the Grand Rapids Comic-Con Spring Fling is in Kalamazoo. I will be there, as well as their second show in November that is actually in Grand Rapids. But this weekend, from the 12th through the 14th, I will be at Kalamazoo. Jay will likely be there with me, repping Generation Geek. We're going to be doing some interviews live from the floor for both platforms. If you have not checked me out at Ka-Pow School everywhere, as well as check out Generation Geek. Check out our Patreon, which is live, and it will be fully populated with lots of cool things going on, original art, videos with commentary, the whole 9 yards. If you're interested in learning from the pros, check me out at Ka-Pow School, and here on YouTube at Ka-Pow School, or at teachyoutodraw.com. Join our waiting list. Seats are limited for our 24-25 upcoming school year in September. Seats fill up fast. And yeah, that's about it, man. And if I'd like to hear what you guys think about the losses that the Geek fam have suffered this week. Keep both of these men's families in your prayers. One by natural causes, one by premature causes. Both tragic in their own right and for different reasons, but equal outcome, losses. And so I will talk to you guys later. Remember, hey, this is comics, man. If you like all things comics, anime, movies, the whole 9 yards, you may not be a fanatic. It just might be genetic. So, welcome to the family. Keep it geek. Solo out. Peace. This segment of Generation Geek is brought to you in part by Ka-Pow, the Comic Art Academy. What do your favorite TV shows, hit movies, and epic video games all have in common? They were created by and employ comic book artists. Want to know how? Then you want Ka-Pow. Check out their YouTube at Ka-Pow School or visit teachyoutodraw.com for more information.